Hey, what's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Roll Pod, an Alabama sports podcast from Bama 247. I'm your host, Cody Goodwin. We've got the whole gang here, Alex Scarborough and Mike Rodak. Welcome to the off-season podcast schedule. We're going to go once a week for the next 2-3-ish months till probably we get through SEC Media Days in July to kind of throttle back, take some time off. Things are a little bit slower now on the college sports calendar. I know that the spring season postseasons are upon us, right? The SEC softball tournament began today. We're recording this on Tuesday, May 6th in Athens. SEC baseball is going to be in Hoover in a couple of weeks. We'll pay attention. Probably not going to take up too much space on the podcast, or at least more than what I've just mentioned, but it's the off season. And so we're going to treat it as such, which means one podcast a week. Guys, does it feel like, I don't want to say summer vacation, but it's kind of like, okay, like it's at least that time of the calendar, right?
It is, thank God. But at the same time, as somebody who's trying to get ready to sell a house and move, there are no days off. There's always something on the checklist of things to do. But thankfully, we're not sitting here continuing to monitor the portal because it's weird. It's closed for players going in, but we still like drips and drabs of guys committing. But all's quiet on the Crimson Tide front.
Mike, does it feel like summer for you?
No, because I'm busy this week because it's preview magazine season. And if you happen to be writing previews for magazines, then you're very busy right now. So that's what I'm up to.
I grew up in an NFL city, so like preview magazine stuff, it's like they'll show up in a bundle on my doorstep in August, and I'll be like, oh, all right, cool. Let's see what's
They
up.
show up in August, but they are
Now's when they're done.
right.
Yeah.
They go to publication in May is typically the month. And so there's always a mad dash to get those in. So I'm actually quite busy with that.
Those who follow Bama 247 know anything and everything there is to know about the Alabama football team, which is what we're going to discuss today on the podcast. We're going to kind of take a vibe check of where the roster currently is at. We're going to go position by position. And as I was thinking about how I wanted to construct this show, looking at Alabama's roster, there's a lot to like. There's also a lot that maybe we don't like. And so what I thought we could do today was go position by position. I brought back my trusty quarter that we used a few shows ago. It's a 2007 quarter that represents Montana, for those who are curious. It says Big Sky Country on it. I'm going to pull a mic and put it all the way up next to my camera so you can see the bowl. And so what were
state quarters were a thing? Those are
state quarters?
Deal. Snake quarters or state quarters?
State quarters. I didn't realize snake quarters were a thing.
No, I thought that's what you said.
Sounds like a game you play off Vegas Strip. Snake.
See, when I only have one podcast a week, sometimes my enunciation skills fall by the wayside. So
there's a bush on the other side of this window that's on the other side of my laptop. I'm staring at the bush right now. And a couple of days ago, I looked out there and there was a snake on top of the bush. It was just a garter snake. But speaking of
top of the bush,
yeah, it was like in the bush, like I'm laying on leaves. It was, it's funny. They say garter snakes are actually venomous, but that's what it looked like. And it was lying in the bush. One snake in the bush is worth two in the hands, or something like that.
Welcome to the off season.
Here we are.
But no, so I brought my quarter out because what we're going to do is go position by position. And there are things that we like and don't like about each position group on Alabama's roster currently as it's set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip the coin. And if it's heads, whose ever turn it is between Alex and Mike is going to tell us what they like about that position group. And if it's tails, they're going to tell us what they don't like about that position group. And the hope is that we get some fun discussion about Alabama's position groups, or at least how we feel about them more than 100 days out from week one. So in order to decide who goes first, Alex, you haven't talked about snakes. Heads or tails on whether or not you want to go first?
Heads.
It's heads. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
Go second. That means, Mike, you've got quarterbacks. Heads, you got to tell me what you like. Tails, you got to tell me what you don't like about the quarterbacks. You ready?
Wait, so, okay, I got you. So now you're flipping it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Do I need to flip it again, or can I?
No, you can look at it.
Trust you.
It's tails. Mike,
Okay.
what do you not like about Alabama's quarterback room?
They have a combined 52 career pass attempts. You're looking at a group that has not very much experience. And that, I think, would scare me a little bit, because it's not like a typical. There was probably a time where in college football history, your backup you could have played his first couple years. He wasn't going to leave, play him against Tarleton State or whatever, and gets into the game and plays a decent amount. I mean, even under Saban, they were able to get quarterbacks into the game. The Tua, Jalen Hurts here, because they were beating people so badly that by the third quarter, you could put in your backup. That hasn't happened a lot the last couple of years, and because of that, Ty Simpson's exposure is not great. Austin Mack's exposure is minimal. I mean, there's the throw to Rico Scott, the touchdown throw. In fact, I think he put it on his Instagram story the other day. But that's his highlight so far. That's all he has in terms of actually playing on the field. So that's not a lot. And then Keelan Russell obviously comes in without any experience. So you have no experience. And you're going into, as I've mentioned a bunch of times, your first game of the year is on the road at Florida State. It's not at home against Western Kentucky like it was last year. So just the shock factor of going from as much as you can practice in the stadium with noise on the practice field, whatever. Even Ty Simpson, I think, got into the Wisconsin game last year, but by then the stadium was half empty. There's a shock factor to that opening drive of the season in Florida State, the noise, the energy, everything. And you're Ty Simpson and you're not under center because they don't do that anymore, but you're standing behind center. What happens then? There's something different about it. So I think that's when you start to gain experience. But even then, like, what happens down the road when something doesn't go right? How do you react? And that's something that even Kalen DeBoer was mentioning on the radio the other day. Like, you don't know how you react in those situations when things are not going your way. And when you don't have a lot of experience, you don't have a lot of experience to lean on in those sort of situations.
Here's a fun stat to consider, because we're rolling out kind of weekly look aheads, analysis, all different types of things about each position group over the course of the summer months. And we're starting this week with quarterbacks, right? And so I did kind of the breakdown of the room. And one of the things that I saw was, to your point about the inexperience, the entire Alabama quarterback room, which consists of Simpson and Austin Mack primarily, right? Because Keelan Russell obviously just enrolled, has played 193 offensive snaps total. By comparison, and this is not perfect, but Arch Manning at Texas last season played 233 snaps and started 2 games. Like, that's more than the entirety of Alabama's quarterback room. And so that inexperience it's a little worrisome. And that was another thing that I wrote kind of in the breakdown, is like, look, like there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve and an adjustment here, because none of these guys have been there before. And especially starting the season at Florida State at Doak Campbell Stadium. And it's a tone setting game, I think, for both programs. Having said all of that, Alex, why are we being paranoid? Give us the
I don't think you're being paranoid. I mean, I think there's the remaining thing is, we know Ty Simpson's skilled enough. We just haven't seen him do it. He's got to take the bull by the horns and win. So I think that skepticism is merited. The thing you have to like is that you have 3 quarterbacks, is that you got through the spring and to a lesser extent the winter portal window as well, with 3 quarterbacks that can all conceivably take snaps for you. In this day and age, it's not easy to do. It's hard to have 2 guys that you feel confident in, let alone 3. So the numbers game of it's good. The fact that you've got a little bit of a varied experience in terms of, in college, you have Ty at the top and then you've got Keelan at the bottom. That's good. But the best thing about the quarterbacks is not the quarterbacks. It's the fact that the receivers are supposed to be better. If this offensive line can stay healthy, which is a big if, the receiving room, I think, has the potential to take a huge step forward. We know what you can get out of Ryan Williams. You know what you can get out of Jeremy Bernard. But Isaiah Horton being added to this mix, and really the depth of it with Rico Scott coming on, Latsier Brooks, Cole Adams, Derek Meadows, there's numbers there that should help the quarterback position more than anything else. So it's numbers, it's the skill around them that should improve overall and make their job a little bit easier. And by just the way they function as quarterbacks, less quarterback dependent of an offense. Every offense is quarterback dependent. But with Jalen Milroe, it was all or nothing, because if he ran well, Alabama was going to do well. If he didn't, they didn't. So it should be a little bit more balanced and maybe not as much pressure on those quarterback shoulders.
So the best thing about Alabama's quarterback room has almost nothing to do with the quarterback.
And it's not a knock on the quarterbacks. It's just the state of play right now because they haven't done enough to say this guy's going to be great next week. Like, we got to see Ty do it. We feel great about Keelan Russell's potential, but where is he at in his development? Is he a year away from being able to make a difference? Can he do it this year? There's not enough actual evidence to go on. There's good feelings, but I think more than good feelings is you've got to have production to kind of backstop that. And to Mike's point, they just don't have it at this point.
Alex, you're up next with running backs. Which one are you hoping for, heads or tails?
I don't know. Either way, I'm good.
It's tails. What do we not like about the running backs?
There's no star. There's no bell cow. And this is the same thing that I was talking about a year ago. They get no explosive plays, and they get too many negative plays. And you lose Justice Haynes, who, for maybe not limitations, but we never saw the full version of him. He was kind of the guy I think who had the highest potential, and now he's gone. Jam Miller's a nice player. Don't get me wrong, but there's a body of evidence that says that he's good, but not necessarily great. Can you talk yourself into Jalen Milroe's gone? Everything's going to be better. Sure. The numbers don't support that. Again, explosive plays, negative plays, third down conversions. None of those things are good. Breaking tackles, avoiding tackles. Go back to last week's pod. I'm not going to pull up the numbers again. They're bad. So they've got to figure out a way to be better at those things. And are they going to become overnight the best running back room in the SEC? I know. But they need to be more than, I don't know what a lesser term than a liability is. They need to be productive. At the bottom line, they need to create positive yardage on first down and be a balancing mechanism for the passing game, because I think they're going to be pass heavy this year, but you need to get more production out of those running backs. It starts with Jam Miller. Maybe Richard Young can be that guy for you, but they've got to turn a corner, because last season was very underwhelming, and it was not all Jalen Milroe's fault.
Mike, you got anything nice to say about the running backs in response to that? Because I think vibes are generally pretty low on the running back room, but what's the counter here?
I'm not sure there is one, other than you have options. I think having options, I mean, we're probably going to say this about every position because they didn't lose anybody in the spring. You still have everybody, I think, is kind of the general vibe across the board. But it's true at running back, because I don't get the sense that Jam Miller is in trouble in terms of not being the number one guy. But I don't know if you have to be married to him this entire season. Like, what if Richard Young deserves more playing time? What if Daniel Hill gets healthy and deserves more playing time? What if Dre Washington all of a sudden comes along, learns the offense this summer, and is in a better spot to contribute by the fall? Like, you have options. That's the good thing. And then in theory, you have AK Deer developing. In theory, you get a commitment this summer from EJ Crowell, and you have guys coming in for next year. But for right now, like, you have 4 guys to choose from. I think you'd feel okay playing. I don't know if you have to be married to Jam Miller being the number one guy, but that seems to still be where things are at.
So Jam is pretty well entrenched at RB1, at least at this juncture of the offseason. We'll see what happens, if anything, over the course of fall camp. I'll throw this out to either of you guys. What do you feel like the staff needs to see from, because it seems like they trust Jam. What do they need to see from Richard Young or Daniel Hill or Dre Washington to be like, you know what, let's give this dude a few more shots?
I think Ryan Grubb said what he needed to see out of Richard Young compared to last season, when he told us in a press conference that he was basically told going into the spring that this guy's not reliable as a pass blocker. This was a deficiency of his. And he said that actually wasn't the case in the spring. So he turned a corner. Can he continue to do that? Because I don't care if you're Barry Sanders, if you cannot protect the quarterback, you're not going to play. I think that's the thing that's got to continue to happen for him. And if you are looking for a sliver of optimism, that's really the only one I can be like, maybe, because I think, Cody, you and I agree. Like, I like the potential of Richard Young. And what you saw from last year was pretty good, but it was very limited. So can he get more reps because he's more trusted in the offense now? Maybe those two things can sort of work themselves out. He gets more touches this year and brings a little bit more oomph to that running back room.
I think Grubb's comments post-spring were telling in that maybe Young is along that track, or at least on the right track. And so you wonder what's the timeshare going to be like through the first few weeks at running back between Jam, Richard Young, maybe a little bit of Daniel Hill if he's healthy, maybe Dre Washington if he's not. So another thing to pay attention to. And I think to Mike's point, to be optimistic about it, like if there's not enough production through the first few weeks, they do have bodies that they can kind of throw at the problem to see if they can solve it.
Next year, 2026, Richard Young's going to be the old guy in the room.
That's a very weird thought.
And
did that just go over your head?
Yeah, not to continue the negativity, but I'm sitting here thinking about the running backs and what the impact is next year. Alabama was really good in the red zone last year
because
was very good running the football.
Yes,
they're going to have to find ways to get in the red zone and run the ball effectively in ways they just did not do last year as a running back room. So I think that's something to watch early on, and that is as much the offensive line as it is those running backs, but they've got to figure out a way. Again, they don't have to be the top of the SEC, but they need to not be a liability.
Moving on to receivers. Mike, this one's for you.
Tails.
3 tails in a row. What do we not like about the receiver room, Mike?
See, that's actually a harder one to come up with something. What I don't like is that I still don't know if there's going to be enough balls to go around. I think there's kind of this idea that they're just going to become 2023 Washington again, and everybody's going to eat. Everybody eats. Like, I don't know if that's
Can you do that again?
Going to be.
Oatmeal, like porridge, like the spooning. Like, what are you eating? Soup?
Spooning.
Picturing Rico Scott coming up like week 6. Please, sir, may I have some more?
Right. I think there's certainly a lot of optimism that there's going to be more production from Ryan Williams. Just wrote about it again this week. Like his second half of the season kind of stunk statistically. And Kalen DeBoer kind of pointed to needing to peak at the right time physically. Jeremy Bernard, I think, had a very good year. I'm sure he came back instead of going to the NFL draft with the expectation of having even a better year as a senior. Isaiah Horton transferred from Miami, came here, I'm sure with the expectation of having a better year. I don't know if everybody's going to check that box and have a better year and everything's going to work out. I don't know if there's going to be that amount of opportunity for everybody. Like, I think they're still going to try to run the ball. That's something Ryan Grubb has kind of talked about. Like, he felt like his best teams at Washington were still able to run the ball. That's still something you want to do identity-wise in the SEC, I feel like. So I don't know if you can just throw 50 times a game with Ty Simpson and an offensive line that still has some question marks, particularly right tackle. Like, so are there going to be enough balls to go around to still make every wide receiver happy? Because it seemed like last year the wide receivers weren't very happy because 6 of them walked out of the door, including a couple of them the day that they could. That would be my negative if you want to say that. But I mean, you're stretching because it's a room that you could argue is the best on the team. That
he's up there, but yeah,
depends if what you define as a room. But I think wide receivers should be the strength of this team. I think that's the way it's set up. Like, I don't know, in the transfer portal era, are you going to have a much better group than this? Like, you're not going to put together the 2019 room again. So, you want to take advantage of that. I just don't know if it's going to be to the level that we all think, or fans might think, or even the players in the room might think, just because it's impossible to turn that one loaf of bread into a million little pieces for everybody.
See, Mike's a very good team player, because I would have looked in the camera and Cody had asked me, what don't I like about the receiver room? And I would have said, nothing. And I would have stopped talking. Well, at the end of the day, if your problem is not enough receivers are going to catch passes, have you ever met a receiver that's content catching a certain number? It's not possible. Like, receiving rooms are not built to be happy top to bottom. They're a bunch of divas by and large. Everybody thinks they're a star. Somebody's going to not be happy. That's okay. That's football. That's competition. Like, that's how this stuff works. You know why you're happy about Alabama's receiving rooms? Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, Cole Adams, Latsir Brooks. Like, it's Rico Scott. It's numbers. And it's numbers top to bottom. But the thing that they didn't have a year ago is when we were having this conversation, they have stars at the top. And yes, Ryan Williams fell off the second half of the season. Nobody's denying that, but he was a freshman. not just that, he was a freshman who was in college a year before. He should take a step forward. He has gained weight, gained physicality, and Jeremy Bernard does come back for a reason. Isaiah Horton does come here for a reason. There's no reason to not feel good about this group. Like, I can get pessimistic about a lot of things, but unless the quarterbacks are just terrible, these receivers should be good. And it's a good spot for Alabama to be in. If there's one position, I think DB is another, but I think receivers in a very good place.
Again, not a complete apples to apples comparison, but that 2023 Washington offense had the 3 NFL receivers, right? Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. They had a rock star offensive line. Oh, by the way, they have Michael Penix at quarterback. They threw the ball in 15 games 555 times. They ran the ball 411 times over the course of the season. That was probably more personnel driven. I am curious to see what the breakdown's going to be for this Alabama team, because I don't know that they're going to throw it 500 times. I think if they do, they're probably behind late in a lot of games and they're just trying to chuck it to catch up. But I am curious to see kind of how the offense evolves and what that means for the receiver room as a whole. And even DeBoer had said something to the effect of, we may try 5-6 receiver rotation. Like, they're going to try and get a lot of guys involved here, even though the top 3, and then I would argue Rico Scott in that number 4 spot are pretty well established. And I'd like to just kind of see them feed those guys majority of the time. But I don't know. I'm very curious to kind of see how this whole thing comes together, what kind of faith they have in whoever wins the quarterback battle, what that means for the way the offense kind of flows. There's a lot of possibility here, but I agree with you, Alex. Like, when it comes to the vibe of the receiver room, like, thumbs up all around. Cause like, yeah, they lost a lot of dudes through the portal, but they got, I think the way I phrased it like a month and a half ago, they got leaner. Like, it's a very, like, they lose a lot of guys, but like the guys that they have here, like, you still feel really good about, right? Like, they brought in Horton, Rico Scott has taken strides. Cole Adams is going to get healthy. Lotsier Brooks and Derek Meadows had pretty strong springs. Jalen Mbakwe is a freak athlete, even though he's kind of at the bottom of the pecking order at the moment, but there's a lot to like about the room.
I don't know. I just got an alert from Tide 100.9. An Alabama woman had a snake removed from her body. Was the app alert I just got. So speaking of snakes,
I have a lot of questions after that.
Apparently, it crawled down her throat.
Did she not notice?
I guess not.
Did she?
This, talk about off-season content. I mean, I clicked on it.
This is the Snake Podcast, apparently.
They had a video about it.
They had a video
of the snake getting removed from this lady's throat. I mean, it's...
Nobody say HIPAA to me ever again. If you can take a video of somebody getting a snake removed from their body and post it on the World Wide Web, don't talk to me about HIPAA.
Alex, you're up next with tight ends. We've hit tails 3 times in a row. Make it 4 times. What do we not like about the tight end room, Alex?
Tail hitting.
CJ Dupree and Robbie Oots aren't back, and you had to get 2 tight ends in the transfer portal to feel good about what you had. It's one of the biggest question marks on the team. And look, I like Josh Cuevas as a player, but he's stepping into pretty big shoes, and he's going to be the guy they rely upon because there's just frankly nothing behind him, like in terms of people who have produced. You know, maybe Brody Dalton's a really good player, but he's been in the group of 5 level for his entire career. Maybe Jack Samarco is a player, but he's young and is coming over from West Virginia and wasn't around in the spring. You know, does Danny Lewis become a guy overnight? They lack playmakers, and maybe that's not the worst thing in the world because you have depth at receiver, but you lack playmakers, and I think it's still a question. Do you have enough physicality in terms of blocking? I think that's why we've covered on the show. That's why they went out and got 2 guys in the portal. It's just I don't think it's where they exactly want the room to be, and I think that's why they recruited like they did, bringing in 2 tight ends who I think they think have a bright future. Marshall Pritchett enrolled early, had an injury late in spring that knocked him out. I don't know what his timetable is. He should be back for fall camp, I think. And then Caleb Edwards will be in within the month, I guess, be on campus. But where's his timetable at? Right now, they're just kind of, it seems like they're in a little bit of a transition year at that position, because even if you feel good about Josh Cuevas, he's not going to be back next year. So,
Or Brody Dalton.
Or Brody Dalton, yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice to have a playmaker at tight end. I feel like those are still hard to find.
For Alabama, again,
I mean, they
never
tried
really
that.
had a difference maker at tight end.
They tried that with Amari Niblack.
Mm-hmm.
Just never really seemed to come together. And even Dupree. I mean, they got Dupree out of the portal from Maryland. He arguably didn't make a great decision because he had more statistical production at Maryland as a sophomore. Came here for 2 years. His numbers dropped and he didn't get drafted. So that didn't really work out. I mean, Miller Forrestall was kind of a guy. Like, they've had a string of tight ends. Like, you have to go back to like Irv Smith or OJ Howard in terms of a guy who's put up a little bit of production. I don't even know if I'd call those playmakers. Maybe Irv.
They were solid players, but I don't think they ever reached the potential of what a lot of people had for them.
Right. So it'd be nice to have that guy. I just don't know. Most years, you're probably not going to have that. What I want out of my tight ends is I want to rely upon them to block for me. They've been broken down the tape enough on Josh Cuevas to see all of his blocking snaps last year, to know as a full-time guy out there, can he deliver as a blocker? But I think it's good that you brought in Brody Dalton and Jackson Marco, because same thing as always. It gives you options of guys who might be able to block for you. But to me, I think blocking is going to be more important when you have what you have at wide receiver. You know, you're not running Notre Dame's offense or Michigan's offense or whoever's offense that's very tight end focused. You're
Penn
running
State, Iowa,
right?
Big Ten schools,
right? Just that general region of the country that seems to produce big numbers out of their tight ends. Like, I don't even think
nowhere else.
Yes. I want a 6-man protection that Ty Simpson can rely upon, and 3 wide receivers, and get the ball out to those guys, because that's where you want the ball. So blocking is the most important thing for me at that position. I just don't know how that's going to look.
I'm curious too. Do we think we'll see more 4 receiver sets with a tight end, or more 4 receiver sets with the running back?
Probably with the running back.
Probably with the running back, yeah. Because, I mean, even if they don't get the ball, you want the threat of that person getting the ball for a defense to have to account for. The more likely thing is 3 receivers, tight end, and a running back. But
yeah, I think that'll be their base offensive personnel. But like, if they want to get creative and try to get 4 receivers on the field, do you have Richard Young starting in the backfield as, let's pass protect, and if nothing's there, leak out? Or do you start with the tight end to chip to help one of the tackles and then he goes out? I don't know. Like, be curious.
If you can do it, you're going to be really good offensively, because I've said this time and time and time again. Great teams, national championship teams, can protect with 5 because you can hurt a defense that way. They can't account for it. And on the flip side, you can win up front on defense and you don't have to send numbers. It's hard to do, though. There's a reason very few teams can do that, because you're going to have some liability on your offensive line you're going to have to cover up for.
One final note on the tight ends, Brody Dalton, the Troy transfer. I kind of wish this guy had one more year of eligibility, because he started his career at UAB. Then he went to Troy for 2 years. Now he's at Alabama. I would like to see him have one more year, just so he has the option to maybe explore another in-state school. I don't know. It seems like he's just kind of making his way around the state, and I feel like he needs to just add one more school to the docket. Speaking of protecting with 5, Mike, we are on to the offensive line. Will this be our first heads flip of the show? Nope, it's tails. What do we not like about the offensive line, Mike?
That you lost Elijah Pritchett and you don't really have a natural replacement for him. Hey, I saw that.
I mean, I'm not hiding.
Here's the thing. Elijah Pritchett played over Wilkin Formby last year.
Yes.
So ostensibly he was better than Wilkin Formby last year. That's why he played. Like, I feel like that's
Wilkin Formby was a redshirt freshman, but go ahead.
Right. So, but I mean, Pritchett wasn't, I think he was a year older than he was a redshirt sophomore last year. It's just kind of by default. I think Wilkin Formby becomes the guy. I don't know if Formby was ever by design. I mean, yes, he was young, but it's like, did you really recruit him?
When I make an ass of myself, it's not because I'm a huge Wilkin Formby believer. I'm just a Elijah Pritchett skeptic.
Right. He's not to the level of like elite offensive tackle prospect that's come through Alabama before. I don't know if necessarily you signed Wilkin Formby a couple years ago with the strong belief that he's going to be a starter for you multiple years. I think it's one of those where you kind of see where it goes. If it works out, that's good. Like, you signed Tommy Brockemeyer with the belief that he was going to be a starter. I think if that plan came to fruition, he'd be your right tackle starter right now. but that didn't happen. So you just don't really have a plan A. I think Formby's always kind of felt like plan B. Again, good player, but he's not Evan Neal. He's not Alex Leatherwood. He's not Tyler Booker. He's not Caden Proctor. He's not Jonah Williams. Like, I just don't know if he's that level of player. Maybe with a year or two, he turns into that. But for right now, I feel like that position is a little bit of a liability based on what we saw last year from Wilkin Formby. It can get better, but it's just you don't want to necessarily be forced into playing him. And I think right now you're forced into playing him unless, I know what you're going to say, Cody, Michael Carroll, or somebody floats to the surface, Jackson Lloyd, but I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 3 months.
That actually wasn't what I was going to say. My first thought was going to be, is there any confidence whatsoever that with more reps, Wilkin Formby will improve?
I think there's a hope with any player, like any player on the face of the earth, basketball, football, whatever. They're all going to say, we just need more reps. We need more time. We need playing time. Like every single player that's in the transfer portal from either sport right now is saying the exact same thing. Like, we just need time to go out there and we'll show what we can do. So I think there's a level of confidence from all those players. But I think if you're a coach or the burgeoning area of scouting and personnel in college football, you have to be able to sort through that and kind of figure out what's reality and what's not going to happen. I think with Wilkin Formby, yes, you like the body size, you like the overall frame, 6'7", 300 plus pounds is what you want your tackle to be. It's just, I don't know if you can sit there and be like, just because we play him more, he's going to get a whole lot better. He might get a little bit better. Is that good enough in the SEC? I don't know.
So Mike doesn't feel good about right tackle specifically. Alex, why should we feel good about the offensive line?
I think it's fair to think that right tackle could be the liability. I think you feel good about the offensive line because starting five's really good. Yes, Wilkins, you're lesser than in that scenario, but Mike's right. Everybody thinks they're going to get better with reps. You know who gets better with reps? Freshman to sophomore year. When you get thrown into the fire, you survive it and you come out on the other side. I liked what I saw from Wilkin Formby bouncing back from an awful start to last season. Like there was a reason people were going crazy. He should never have done this, but death threats and all this other stuff. He had a terrible game. He was a liability. He wasn't really that much of a liability the rest of the season. He played quite a bit for not being a starter. So he became somebody they did not lose faith in. Then you have an offseason in the weight room. You have an offseason under your belt. Like, there's no reason to think he can't get better. Is the ceiling as high as somebody else? Maybe not. But if he's not a liability, and then you start turning to Jaden Roberts, who I think, if he can stay healthy, can be one of the better guards in the country. Parker Brailsford already shown he's one of the better centers in the country. You got to figure out your left guard situation. Gino Vandemark, I think if he is your fallback option, you're in a pretty good spot because he played a lot of football, he played a lot of different positions, and he brings a lot of mental know-how to the game and can really be there with Brailsford and add to the brain power of that offensive line. And then, oh, by the way, if Caden Proctor in his money year turns the corner and becomes a guy who fulfills these mock draft projections that he's a top 5 pick, he's got a long way to go to get there. But he has all the potential in the world. If you can have that happen, like, what's to say this is not a good offensive line? The pieces are there. Do they need to fall into place? Absolutely. But I think the potential of this group as a whole is really high.
I generally feel pretty good about the offensive line. And I think I especially feel better knowing that Grubb is now in the fold. I know he's the offensive coordinator. He's going to be the play caller. He has a background as an offensive line coach. And I just feel like the combined brains of him and Cap are really going to help this unit develop as the season goes. Like, I think they're going to be significantly better by weeks 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 compared to what we'll see week 1 in Tallahassee against Florida State. I think that adds to the good vibes here.
I'm not going to blame, again, that's going to be the theme of this whole thing. I'm not going to blame everything on Jalen Milroe. I think being in more a traditional offense will help the offensive line in some way, whether it's big or small.
Defensive line, which includes the tackles and the bandit defensive end position. Alex, this is you. We got tails again. What do we not like about this? Is so on brand for us. I feel like that we're just starting with all the negative.
I was prepared to say something very nice, and I think the floor of this group is pretty high. But I'm going to talk about the same thing I wrote about last week. Like, where's the star defensive lineman from Alabama? How long do we have to wait for that to return? They had 4 first-round picks at that position from 2011 to 2019. They've had none since. They've had half the number of all-conference selections on the defensive line than the past 5 years is the 5 years before that. The days of Jonathan Allen, Marcel Darius, Ashawn Robinson, on and on, Quinnen Williams, on and on down. It's gone. I don't know where it went. I have no idea. But they're not recruiting it. They have not been historically, so not just past year, past 5 years, not been recruiting at the level that Alabama became accustomed to, and they've not been developing players at the level that Alabama's become accustomed to. I could say nice things about certain players. I will leave that to Mike because I think there are some good players on this team, but they're just not. They're not guys you look at and say that's a first-round pick, that's a second-round pick, that's a guy who's going to just ruin an offensive coordinator's day. And quite frankly, they don't have the depth behind them. There might be some guys that you think, oh, there's good vibes, but not a can't-miss prospect. So could they be all right? I think, again, the floor is pretty high. I wish there was a little bit more potential in this group.
Always am going to give Mike credit here because he was the first one to kind of bring it up that Tim Keenan, probably perhaps one of the most important players on the roster and maybe inarguably the most important player on the defense, because if he goes down, especially at that interior defensive line position, there's not a lot of experience behind them. Not only that, not a lot of experience and not a lot of production behind him. And so his health is paramount. His ability to produce is paramount. I think we like maybe the starting 3 guys, right? James Smith, Tim Keenan, and then LT Overton at that banded defensive end position. But behind those guys, not a lot of dudes that have played a lot of snaps, not a lot of guys that have produced a lot in some of the opportunities that they have gotten. And so, again, not a perfect comparison here, but similar to quarterback where it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of see it, but I still need to see it, if that makes a lot of sense. Mike, why should we feel good about the D-line?
Because you have Tim Keenan and LT Overton when you might not have. I don't think anything was guaranteed there, especially probably in Overton's case, where he had some pretty high projections in the draft. And if you had lost both of those guys, like I guess you recruited Kelby Collins out of the portal in December, maybe as an insurance policy for Bandit. And maybe you get whatever you get out of Jordan Renaud and Keon Keeley on top of that. But I don't know what you would have done at defensive tackle. You lose Tim Keenan if he had gone into the draft this past winter. What are you doing? Like, you're starting Jeremiah Beeman or Edric Hill next to James Smith. I'm sure you're looking in the portal for somebody, but those guys are hard to find and they're very expensive. So the good news is that you still have them because it's better than the alternative. So that is where I'll go as far as what you have, because I think what you have, I mean, LT Overton and maybe Tim Keenan are going to show up on SEC preseason all conference lists when they do that in Atlanta in July. So it's not like it's bad. We're accustomed to seeing something better at Alabama out of that group, but that doesn't mean what you have is bad. Mm-hmm. But it's still better than not having what you have. So that's the positive that I will drag out of that position room right now.
The wild card to me, if I was going to be overwhelmingly positive, is James Smith, because he brings a little bit more at that position than Tim Smith does. And Tim Smith was a pretty solid player, but he wasn't much of a pass rusher. He was primarily really good in the running game. And James is going to have to hold up that part of it. But in half the snaps, he had the same number of pressures. In half the snaps, he had 3 batted passes as opposed to 1. So he's got a little bit of quick twitch to him. And can he finally getting the opportunity to start after being an often used reserve, but still a reserve? Can he be a guy who turns the corner? If he does, playing alongside Tim Keenan, they could be pretty good. I don't know if he vaults all the way up draft boards or anything like that, but I think he is a reason for optimism at that position. And look, a lot of what I said about defensive line, look, LT Overton's a really good player. I primarily think about interior defensive linemen, and he's on the edge. I know we talked about Bandit too. He's got to close that gap between pressures and sacks. But again, that's why I think the starting group is pretty good. You just want to see it take a step forward, and you want numbers overall. And they're not throwing a whole heck of a lot at you.
The depth and experience of the younger D-line guys behind those starting three, like how they develop early on in the season, I think could be pretty crucial to what they could ultimately accomplish, at the end of the season. So another thing to monitor: linebackers. We're still searching for our first heads flip. Mike, this is for you. Oh, we got heads.
Thank you
Mike.
for giving me heads. I think about the linebackers, obviously the positive is that you have guys back, just like the defensive line, that you didn't think that you might not have back. That's a hell of a sentence to spit out, but Deontay Lawson was supposed to go into the draft if he didn't get hurt. Justin Jefferson, up until December, whatever, was supposed to be out of eligibility until the whole Diego Pavia junior college thing. So you were looking at, this is something that Kalen DeBoer talked about recently, you were looking at that room being very young. Maybe, you had Nakai Hill-Green coming in, that would have been your veteran. And then behind him, Caden Jones, QB Reese, the other guys you have in there would have been your other options. So instead, you have 3 fifth-year or 6-year seniors in Nakai Hill-Green's case at that position. And that's what you like. Obviously, you want to see where it is with Deontay Lawson. Like, he's, I'm sure, going to be kind of rusty coming off of fairly significant injury. Whenever he gets back, it's a big year for him in terms of setting up his NFL draft potential. But you like what you have in those two guys, and I think you like the ceiling and the potential of Quay Russo as well at Wolf. So, it could have been a lot different, I think, is the theme at that position as well. And the fact that it is what it is I want to say it's not a positive reflection in Alabama. They kind of got lucky with the junior college thing. They, in a weird, twisted way, they got lucky with Deontay Lawson's injury, but it does benefit them that's what they have back now, and that helps the team.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like the ideal scenario when it comes to trying to build a program. You've got 3 veteran guys who are experienced, who can produce, who will produce, 3 guys that you trust, and then you've got some younger guys behind them who are going to spend the year learning, developing. They're probably going to get some run on special teams. And then next season, they'll be able to step in. And yes, there will be a drop off, but you just hope that the developmental year and everything that they learn this upcoming season will prepare them so that maybe the drop off isn't as huge. So there's a lot to like about this current linebacker room. Alex, why should we cool our jets a little bit?
I don't think people should necessarily cool their jets. It's a solid group. I'm a big Quay Russo guy. I think he's got tremendous potential. If I'm looking for a reason to settle down, it's because, man, Jahad Campbell another year would have been great. I mean, he really was. He let Kane Womack do so many things defensively that I don't think people understand the deficiencies he covered up, because he was giving you strong inside linebacker play, and then he was turning around and rushing the passer at outside linebacker. So it's like you're losing 2 starters in a sense. And where does that production come from? Because he was good against the run, and he was pretty good in coverage. So, it's tough to replace that. I don't think you can do a 1-for-1. You just got to hope that Justin Jefferson and Nakai Hill-Green can give you something, and then Quay Russo can develop as kind of an edge rusher and give you a little bit of both. It's a lot to ask to have everybody raise their game. That's why I'm, kind of sucks that Jahad's gone. I get it. First round pick, you go. But those are some big shoes to fill. And while I like the group overall, I don't know that there's not some plug and play guy, especially because you don't know how quickly it's going to take Deontay Lawson to get to 100%. Like Mike talked about, if he wasn't injured, he probably wouldn't be on the team, but you wonder what his timeline looks like and how quickly he can get there. So those kind of 2 things working in tandem are why I have a little bit of pause, but I think overall people are right to feel positive about that group.
I think all indications suggest that Deontay should be good to, I guess, at least put the pads on by fall camp, but where he's at in the recovery process will be an interesting thing to monitor. And then I think the other thing too is we all feel pretty good about Quay at Wolf. He seems to have stepped into the leader of that room, I'd like to see him produce a little bit more. Like, that's all. Like, just take the next step in your game, man. And he is focused on that. Like, when we got to talk to him a couple different times this spring, he's like, yeah, I need to be a better pass rusher. He's like, I found different ways to use my natural athleticism while on the field. He felt good about being able to play the speed of the game. Just, can you take that next step? Can you be a more disruptive pass rusher? Can you add some different smaller tools here and there? Like, it's all like smaller things, incremental improvement. Like, can you do that? Can you take that next step? Right. And so I think that'll be another interesting thing to keep tabs on, because if he can take that next step, if he can fill some of what Jihad did for Alabama's defense last year, like, that just opens up, I think, a whole world of possibility for Kane and his play calling and just the different defensive sets that they're able to get into. Like, it allows them to do more if some of these guys can take that next step. Alex, we are moving on to the secondary. It's Tails.
All right. I said
Tails,
I would do it.
secondary. What do we not like about the defensive backs?
Nothing.
10 out of 10, no notes. Mike, tell us why we love the defensive backs.
No, I want to provide a rebuttal for Alex's last one. I thought Cody didn't like Deshaun Jones, so I just want to throw that out there, that if you're looking for something not to like about the defensive backs, what you need to say is that Cody Goodwin thinks Deshaun Jones needs to be replaced by whoever, anybody you can find.
Can I clarify for like the 14th time?
Because he thinks Deshaun Jones is just kind of a nice little player, but he thinks they can do better.
He thinks about Deshaun Jones like you think about Wilkin Formby.
Thank you.
Yes. But here's the thing. I don't think Deshaun, did he ever get roasted last year?
No.
All right. I thought he was a good little player.
But see, I can't say this because I'm not really finding a lot of fault with the defensive back room. Devontae Smith as the starting Husky was solid.
Mm-hmm.
Much like what you're talking about with Deshaun Jones. Never got roasted. Didn't make a lot of plays either. So would you like it's like the cherry on top. Would you like to get that out of your star or Husky, whatever we're calling it now? Sure. But man, you've got a lot else everywhere else. So I'm not going to fret about it. I'm going to look in the camera and do what I said I'd do with receivers and say, no.
What I like is that it's probably, from a talent standpoint, the most talented room on the roster. And again, depends on how you define room. Because I think top to bottom, it's even more talented wide receiver room. When you talk about Dijon Lee being there, when you talk about Ivan Taylor, and you talk about Zay Mincy, Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson, Xavier Brown, like there are
Cam Calhoun,
Chuck McDonald. There's dudes across the board, high level recruits at all three positions: corner, Husky, maybe not Husky as much, but safety as well, depending on who's at Husky. Like there's high level, there's 5-star talent in a lot of places there. So I mean, there's been no drop off in recruiting, and that's something that I really like about that group, is that you kind of can see the next wave coming, which is harder to do at some other positions compared to that one.
It's nice you've got the bridge. Damani was the bridge to the younger guys last year. Next year, Zabian will be the bridge to the younger guys. They really do have it locked and loaded. I mean, again, I'm not pushing sunshine and rainbows on every single position group, but that's one of them that you like the short term and you like the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another show that we'll probably have over the course of this offseason. But like, if you were to power rank the position groups, I would feel very, very good about very easily sliding DBs in at number one and not thinking twice about it. I like the receiver room. I like a lot of the talent that they have in there. Again, they got leaner. There's a lot of really good talent at the top. And I think the change at quarterback and the change in play caller is going to allow the receivers to thrive a little bit this year, and maybe a way that they did not last year. However, there's just so many dudes at defensive back that you feel good about them being on the field. And that includes Deshaun Jones. For the record, I do like him, period.
You just don't like him enough. You don't love him. Okay. You don't have to feel love.
That's probably fair. Maybe I just need to see a little bit more to like really fall in love with this guy. But like he'll be there. He'll be the day one starter week one at Husky, and that's fine. That's totally cool. Like, because that allows us to maybe see him play a little bit. And like, I don't know, like the secondary is going to be really interesting because like Deshaun may hang on to the starting Husky spot all season, but like there's probably going to be games where they're going to want 3 corners on the field. So do you keep Deshaun Jones there? Do you try to get Dijon Lee or Cam Calhoun on the field. There may be games where they try to get 3 safeties on the field. So that means Zay Mincy's probably going to step into the Husky spot, or, there's going to be a way where they're able to they're going to do there's going to be able to do so many different things with this secondary that Deshaun Jones may well be the answer at Husky. And he still may only play 20, 25 snaps a game, depending on matchups and whatnot, which is not a bad thing. Guy's a good player. Sometimes I want to find great players, and maybe he'll show me to be a great player this year. And if he does, I'll eat it. I'll eat crow if Deshaun Jones turns into a great player this year.
I think you should eat snake. I think snake is the theme of this podcast.
Eating snake?
Like an actual snake? Like I have to eat it like live on the show?
Well, not live. What the hell? I mean, you can cook snake. Let's just do that.
Have you ever cooked snake before?
No, but I know you can do it. Now,
Mike, have you ever cooked snake before?
Bear Grylls TV shows. Not even Bear Grylls. Who was the other guy? One of the travel channels back in the day when you had cable. He was a Canadian guy. He was out in the bush. Speaking of snakes in the bush, we've come full circle.
Next position group. We're
on special teams. This is the last one. And of course, it's tails. What do we not like about the specialists, Mike?
A lot. Everything's new, and you don't know what it's going to look like. And that's scary because you don't know what you don't have until you don't have it. And it's one of those positions where until you line up for that kick, like I said, in Jordan Hare or even in Sanford Stadium early on, you don't know what's going to happen when the ball comes off of Connor Talty's foot. And fans, I mean, again, the average fan probably doesn't know Connor Talty's name right now. They will get to know his name if he misses a big kick. That is just the nature of that kicker position at Alabama. Your punter position feels a little bit uneasy after it being quite easy with James Burnip the last couple of years. And then the long snapper position, David Byrd was out all of the spring, the guy they brought in from Cal. So you're not even at ground zero there. Like you need to work your way up from him actually starting to practice. So it's in a much different spot than it was a year ago when you knew you had James Burnham coming back. You knew you had Neil Hibbett coming back for a 4th year at long snapper. And then you felt good about bringing in Graham Nicholson as the Groza Award winner at kicker, even though he almost never was used. This year, it's a much more uneasy feeling. I'll tee up Alex by saying you probably feel good about Connor Talty's progress, but again, where are you on that?
You can say you feel good about progress, but you got to see it.
Right.
Like that's the unique thing about quarterback and about kicker, especially with kicker. It almost doesn't matter what you do in practice. Like it's so mental that until we see it happen, it's hard to say I feel great about this. Hard to say you feel great about punter because people don't, I think, appreciate how good James Burnip was, how reliable he was. And when you got a bad punter, you got a bad situation on your hands. So I don't have a ton positive to say. Maybe, if I'm trying to be really positive, maybe the return specialists, you can get a little bit more out of that. They were a little bit shaky at that position, and you've got some interesting options there to throw at it. Maybe Ryan Williams continues there. Maybe you put one of the freshmen out there. Maybe Jalen Backway can be a guy. I think they've got some interesting options in the return game where maybe they can create some more explosive plays, but that's me searching under covers and between couch cushions to find optimism. And it's just the way it broke this year with losing both of those guys in the same offseason, and the fact that when you're talking about specialists, it is so dependent on how they perform in game situations. It's just hard to sit here and be like, they're going to be great. You just don't know. You really don't.
I don't know. Like, look, everybody gets excited about kick returners. There's almost no kick returns anymore. So like, I don't even waste time talking about it because it's such a small phase of football. So it's really all about the punt returns and can you break a big one here or there? I mean, it might happen once or twice over the course of a season, but usually against lower level competition. But yeah, I think you'd feel good about Connor Talty being in a better spot, according to Kalen DeBoer and his eyes in practice from last year. I think that's where you'd have to point to in terms of optimism.
Yeah. And the fact that, again, you weren't getting much out of Graham Nicholson, but the flip side of that is they weren't having to use him very much, and I think they're going to need more of a kicking presence in the red zone because you just don't have that cheat code in Jalen Milroe anymore.
I think the other thing you can feel good about, or at least I felt good about, is at A-Day, the snaps look clean, the holds look clean. I know it's not a super live game situation, but it's just like, all right, like I've seen enough. I don't have to worry about that right now.
Yep.
So everything else, what's the punter situation going to look like? How's Connor Talty going to do under the lights? I don't know that we'll actually find any of that out until week 1, but I think it's worth, I don't know that it should keep Alabama fans up at night, but like special teams were a little inconsistent last year. Like there was not really a whole lot in the return game. Burnup was fine. Kicking was practically non-existent. There were some just funny mishaps, right? Like the 2 number 2s on the field at Vanderbilt, which turned a 4th down stop into a touchdown that Vanderbilt ultimately won. There was just a lot of like weird, silly things, right? Like Mbakwe had a couple of punt returns that he just like didn't have his eye on. And I mean, I don't know that he fumbled one of them, but you could tell that it was just a little shaky. They really didn't get much in the way of kick returns. I think Ryan Williams had one good punt return in the bowl game that put them in position to potentially beat Michigan. Of course they didn't, but it was just a lot of, I don't know. And so now you're replacing a lot of the key players from that. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like I got to see. And you don't want them to be, you don't want that unit to be a liability.
You keep it in the back of your mind. You don't have to stay up at night thinking about it if you're an Alabama fan, but you just got to know that it might be a little bit of an adventure sometimes, but it could break in a good way too. Who knows?
The 2 number 2s is one of those things that are just random from last year. But the other thing that I got reminded about the other day was the jump shots from Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard.
yeah.
Somebody made reference to it on Twitter. I'm like, man, I forgot completely about that. Just most random shit that happened last year. That became a story because everybody's like, what are they doing? There was a lot in that Tennessee game. There was that the penalty, the defensive substitution penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Where Mo Linguist shoved the guy back on the field. That was the guy that got them the penalty.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. There was that month of October, man, was a wild ride.
There was
a South Carolina. There was Jeremy Bernard scoring a touchdown that kept the game going.
Mm-hmm. And if he'd have just stepped out of bounds, they could have just kneeled out the clock.
Right. They could have kneeled it down. And then instead, South Carolina was won the game.
Another special teams
Onside
thing. Like they
kick.
recovered the onside kick.
Right.
Like, it was weird.
Wild month of October.
Yeah. All of that to say is special teams. I can understand if there are some people out there who are like, I don't know how I feel about this because I don't know how I feel about it either. So we're with you. We understand. That was all the position groups. That was the vibe check of at least where we're at in this juncture of the offseason. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see an 8-1 split in favor of tails ever again, but I feel like that's maybe a little bit on brand for our show. I don't know. That was new to me. I wasn't expecting that. I was hoping for a few more heads and a lot more positive talk about at least some of these position groups, but
we brought up
positively about them. It just started out negative.
We did, right? Which I think is, that's kind of the on-brand thing is that sometimes we like to pick nits and then we'll circle back and be like, actually, we like this.
We have to play devil's advocate on these things, and we have to see the other side of it. And if you think we're being a bunch of buttheads, oh well. You got to be real with it.
Sometimes we are. Mike is all the time, though. So
just call me Beavis.
Appreciate you getting to the other side of this podcast with us, guys. That's all we've got today. We'll be back next week with another off-season game to continue our off-season discussion about the Alabama football program. In the meantime, be sure to rate and review this show wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, even our Bama 247 YouTube page. Subscribe to Bama 247 and 24/7 Sports. We're going to have a lot of off-season content, some look-aheads, some positional breakdowns, some feature stories that we've also got in the hopper here, probably coming over the next couple of months. We don't want you guys to miss a thing, so I put a link to subscribe in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you guys for listening. We will talk to you all again soon.